Hello everyone, I'm going to show you today how we can um, write codes for creating other graphs using the advanced tools. So I hope you enjoyed the last lecture where I showed you how you can create some basic graphs. If you haven't looked at the previous one, you need to look at the how you can create the basic graphs, then start working on this one. So over here, the lesson for today we have is that you will be familiarizing with creating graphs side by side. So previously we created just one graph and then we control margins, but for side by side graphs, how we can control the margins and divide the windows. Save the graph as a permanent graph. Previously we only created graphs, but we did not save the graph as a single file, so we will be saving as an image and as a PDF. And we will be creating line graphs. Previously we created only scatter plot, the point types, and we will also add some legends. You actually added legends in Excel, but now you will be learning how we can add legends by writing R codes. And then additional items, sometimes we would like to add text or maybe extra lines on graphs, so I will give you and show you how you can add those in a graph. And sometimes we add mathematical expression on the axis levels. So let's say volume is in meter cube, so that means we need to write meter cube in mathematical expression. So that's what I would like to show it to you. So I will add the lecture video over here, and you can see the lecture slides for today's lecture is this one, the graphics, and then how we can create graphs in our Markdown, and then all the advanced tools are mentioned here. So at first, as I mentioned to you, I will be talking about the side by side graph. So you can see we have two graphs we created and they are side by side. That means we divided our window into two parts. So in first we add the one type of graph, and then second one is added after the first one. And let's go to our codes. So over here you can see I gave you the R Markdown file and the knitted word file. Also for today we will be using these two data files. So those are, you can use the CSV file or you can use the R data file. Those both are same, whichever you want you can use them. I talked about these previously. And as an output you will also see that we are creating two graphs. One is in PDF and another is in PNG. So let's download this RMD file and this CSV file or R data file, and side by side I will also show you how you can work on a cloud-based platform. So you can see I already created a project. Over here I will bring in the RMD file and data file, then we can start working on it. Let's open RStudio and I kept everything in a single folder. That's what I'm telling you again and again. So we need to keep everything on a single. So you can see I opened the R Markdown file in here. I closed the previous file. So I will start working on this one, and then also on the cloud I need to upload the RMD file. So I need to look for where I kept the file on my desktop, then I can bring in the file. So that's the file, RMD file, and then say okay. Also I need to upload the CSV or VRI. So both, like the CSV file or the R data file, both are fine. If you are using let's say VRI data, okay, and then upload the CSV file. As I mentioned to you before, if you bring in the VRI data in our data form, then you need to bring it on the global environment. To bring it to the global environment, you need to say choose the data from this window to go in there. So you can see we are ready to go. Okay, and then open this RMD file. So on the cloud, I just showed you. So you will see that I mentioned some steps over here at the beginning. So let's say we are working on the desktop version, then we need to bring in the data. So VRI data is already on my desktop, on my folder where I kept the RMD file. Then I just brought in that file. So you can see the VRI data is here. And then side-by-side graphs. Before we create the side-by-side graphs, we need to know what we actually need to prepare. So on the side-by-side graph here, while we were creating it, I mentioned that I would like to create side-by-side graphs for two kinds of species. Previously we added both species in one graph area, but right now we divided the area into two so that we can actually show two graphs side by side. And then at first I started with dividing the data using the subset, and I divided into two data sets. So right now we only have VRI data. So after I run it, you will see that we have D1 and D2 data sets. That means two data sets we have. And last time I also talked about how we can add par function so that we can actually add graphs. So how many graphs we are talking about side by side? That means we have one row, two columns. So that's why MF row you have one row, two columns. And I also talked about margins. So that means in each side, what should be the gaps, or what should be the space I mentioned in here. That means bottom, top, left, right. And if you are not sure what are the sequence, so you can always write in here question mark MAR question mark par. Par is the function. Within par function we have the MAI. So if I forget, I always go back to the par function and look for, so where we have the first one is the bottom, second one is the left, top and right. That means bottom, left, top, right. So we mentioned how many space we want. And then as I told you before, that I would like to add all the parameters, define them first. So I just define them, and then I created a data set again so that I can find the maximum value. So that means the maximum, where we have the maximum height. So let's see what's the maximum height. So you can see max DI is 10.399. That means that's the maximum height in our D2 dataset. So in D2 dataset, where we have the maximum height, we want to separate that data. So that means M1 has the dataset where we have the maximum height. That's the dataset I would like to show in the graph. So in the first graph, we are going to add the data from D1 where we have species is CW. So you can say I plotted it. And then second one is the data 2, but then again I'm also going to show the maximum height in the data 2. So that means side by side graph I'm going to create. Let's run them. Oops, I need to run it together with the par function. So let's run it together with the par function. otherwise you will see that it's not going to produce the side-by-side graphs. So that means we have the first graph is the CW, second graph is the PLC, the way we created the data set PLC, and then we also shown the maximum height in this data set. So we can see we have one row, two columns, and we created side-by-side graphs. If you need to create 4 graphs, then you need to add 2 rows, 2 columns, and say in each graph how much space you want on each side. Okay, same thing on the cloud-based. So we have our VRI data, then we don't need to read the CSV file. If you read this CSV file, then you don't need to use the R data file. Okay, let's attach the VRI data. We attached it, and then we are going to create side-by-side graph. So that's the same thing you can see. And then saving graph as a permanent file. So that means in the side-by-side graph what we created, if you want to save it as a permanent file on your folder, that means on your desktop, if you want to save them, you need to add an extra line of code. That extra line is depending on what type of file you want to save. So let's say I want to save it as a PNG file. That's why I added the PNG function. On the PNG function, inside the bracket, I have to write what are the mandatory items. So at first I say that the name of the PNG file should be graph2.png. You can give any name, but extension should be .png. And then what's the width and height of that graph, you can mention that. And then the units that you mention in here, the dimension is in inch. That's why I wrote in inch. And the resolution is 1200. You can just change them and see, or you can look for in the PNG function what we actually can add. So that means in the help file you can see what are the parameters we can add. So all of them are mentioned here, so you can see what should be the width, what should be the height, and then units. You can write the units in inch, centimeter, or millimeter. That means those are other options too. Okay, and then we have to start with this permanent files code, and then followed by side-by-side graphs per function. And then you can add your first graph, you can add your second graph. At the end, to save it on your folder, you need to say graphics off. Then it will stop the program and then save it on your folder. Okay, so let's say I run it together, and then I can see on my desktop where I kept all files. So you can see graph 2 is saved. That means this is what I saved. Same thing on the RStudio Cloud. So you can go in there and then run the program, and then you will see that it's saved in here. To get it on your, let's open it. So you can see that's the PNG file you just created on the cloud. Okay, to save it you have to follow the same procedure, export, and then export it to your desktop. Okay, so right now, where are we on the slide? So we save them, and then after that we will add more. So, and also I showed you the point graphs, like type is P is for point graph. Then again I would like to create the line graph. To do that, you can see to create that line graph and create a PDF file I showed you together. So in here I did not add any data set. I created the data set. So you can see I use sequence 0 to 3, and up from 0 to 3 there will be 10 values. So let's show you what are those values. So at first I created it. So you can see if I print X, let's say print X, so you can see the value started from 0, ended in 303. So that means there are 100 values. This is the 97 number value, 97, 90, 99, 100. So that's how you can read them. So it only shows the first values number. So this one is 17th number. So that means we created some values, then I created other variables using some functions. So that means we have 4 variables. So 4 variables are here. So you can see X, Y1, Y2, Y3. What I want to do is that I would like to create some lines, but then again I would like to save it as a PDF file. To save it as a PDF file, you have to say PDF. That means PDF is the function, and then what's the name of the file. So I just gave it a name. And then same way I use the par function, but in the par function right now what I used is the, instead of MAI I used MAR. If I use MAR, the meaning of MAR is that bottom, top, right, left, I said 4 4 2 2. The meaning of this is that the gap should be 4 lines, gap should be 4 lines, gap should be 2 lines, gap should be 2 lines. Instead of the init, I said that how much lines should be there. Also I mentioned that each of those graphs should be a square graph, and then background color should be light yellow. You can use any other color if you want. So that's in a different way I added the par function. Then on top left area, since we are creating 4 graphs I mentioned here, so 2 rows 2 columns, so 4 graphs we are going to create. So that means the first graph, second graph, third graph, and fourth graph. You can see I added all those graphs. So let's see, without creating the PDF file, if you want to do that you can also do it without saving it as a permanent file. If you want to see it in your R Markdown, you need to save it. So let's save it together, then I can explain them. Okay, so you can see I added those graphs, and then on the last graph I actually used the line graph, but the first few I did not. So 1 2 3 4, so you can see that I created graphs, and then I added all of them in the last graph. Okay, so you can see on the first graph I created the point. That means there are 100 points. So that means I actually plotted them, but what I did is that I plotted them as a point graph. I did not mention what type of graph it should be, whether it's a point or line. I did not say that. And I used M text. So in the M text we can say where the title should go. So you can see I mentioned title should go on the side 3. So that means on the top area the title should be added. If you are not sure what is the M text, so let's say question mark M text. So M text, it says that it has sides. So that means in the graph where you want to write the title. That means the axis. So you can see I wrote all 3 functions on side 3. So all 3 side 3 means on top. So everywhere you can see on top I added a title. So you can use the, if you want, you can use the previously we used the title, and then you can use that one, but you can also use this. So you can see I added those, and after the plot function I added this extra line. I said text, and then on top add the function 3 name, and then side is 3 and line 2, that means what should be the width of that line. The last one, you can see that here is the difference. I plotted x versus y1, and then I say that axis is false, means that the levels, there will be no levels. That means over here there shouldn't be any level. That means after that I will add the level for all of them. So you can see y limit, x lab, y lab. So I say that do not add anything. And then using text, I mentioned that now you add that. It's just, I would like to show you, if you want you can add everything in here, that's not a problem. So now I would like to create a line graph. At first I did not add anything. Type is n, that means I did not add anything. Then I said that I would like to create some line graphs. So that means I mentioned that as lines, we should be adding the line graphs using the lines, and then what was the format of those lines, what's the width of those lines. Okay, so you can see I added, it doesn't look nice because I also added the legend in here. And then at the end I added a box. Previously I did not add the box, so I said that add a box in this plot. So you can just plot it separately if you want, so that you can see what I did. So you can see I added a box, I added x, I added y axis as the levels, and then on top we did not add anything. Without the box, if you run this program, you can see without the box there is no box in there. But if we add the box, let's try to see it together. If we add the box, then it will add a box around it. So just separately I tried to show you. So the legend in here I said that add a legend where we have x-axis value is 0, y-axis value is 6.5. So that means for the last one only I added a legend. So you can see legend went to where, it takes time to show you the clear picture. So legend should be on the x-axis is 0, and on the y-axis it should be 6.5. So that means you can see where it started. If you say no, I would like to add it maybe a little bit inside this area, then you have to change the x-axis value. So let's say the x-axis value is 0.2. So that means it should move inside. If I plot it, run, so you can see it moved inside. So also on the legend you have to say which one is the for what you want to show, the function 1, function 2, function 3, what was the line type we added. So line type, first one is the line type 2, 3, 2, 1, 4. That means this is the 2, number 2, number 1, number 4. Those are the types of those lines we added. Okay, if you want to save them, then you have to save graphics off and then start from the beginning, from the PDF. So let's run and save it as a PDF file. So you will see that it will save the PDF file. So you can see that's the PDF file we created. Since I moved it inside, so that's why if you moved a little bit inside, then you need to change the code. Maybe let's say 0.01 and run it again. So let's run it and let's see. So example save, that's the PDF. So you can see now it's on the right area. So on the Markdown file, it looks a little bit messy, but then again, when you will be saving as a permanent graph, you will see that it looks very nice. I always check the permanent graph. And then now you can see these are the points, and then these are the line graphs, because we joined those lines, and we have 3 types of lines. Okay, so same thing on the cloud, and save it as a permanent graph, as a PDF. So you will see that it will create the PDF in here, and then you can download this. So on the so we created that file, and now we would like to know more about the legend. So let's say I would like to add the legend. Where you want to add the legend? Where is in the x-axis where you want to start, in the y-axis where you want to start, and you have to mention what are the symbols you shown in the graph, and you will be adding the same legends on your legend area. So you can see I added the point symbol, I added the star symbol, and I mentioned what are they. And sometimes if we don't have any space, then you have to make a space, maybe make the x-axis or y-axis larger than what it shows the data. That means you can see the data is in here, but I added some space so that we can actually add the legend over there. So let's go back to our code and add legends. So you can see I added legends for this graph, and then I created 2 data sets, and then I added a legend. So let's see that. So on this graph, I added the legends over here. So how I added that? So I created, you can see I added the point types, and then I added the maximum height, maximum height. And then you can see I mentioned that on x-axis it should start from 50, and then y-axis it should start from 20. And then after adding the location, then you have to say what you would like to show. So I mentioned that we have only 2 items to show, and then you have to match the item. So on the color, blue is for projected height, so you have to write it first, and the red is for the maximum projected height. And then what are the point types you added for these 2? So sequentially you have to add that, and these are the size of those points, and then how big you want to create your legend. If you say no, I would like to create those way too big, let's say 2, and then you can run the plot. Now you can see it's way too big, right? So you can play around what should be the appropriate size for this graph. And then for the legend, you can also say that without writing the location, you can say exactly where, top right. That means top right corner you want to add that. So to do that, everything is same, but we want to add on the top right. So you can see it moved to top right, or let's say top left. Top left. Then you will see that it will move to top left. Okay, and you can look for more. If you say what is in the legend, what are the, let's say in the legend, question mark legend, so you will see that top right. Then you will see that what are the functions we can add. So bottom right, bottom left, top right. So those are the location, exact location where you want to add. And adding more elements. So let's see, more elements means, let's say we want to add some lines. So you can see I added some vertical lines and then horizontal lines, and the exact point of those lines. Let's say I would like to add vertical line at x equals 2. So you can see vertical lines where x value is 2, and then horizontal line when y value is 0. So you can add that. And if you want to add any text, so you can see I added a text. So how you can add that, let's see. So at first let's create a graph, and then I said that there should be one graph, and then these are square type graphs, and I plotted them, and I mentioned that what should be the legend. After adding the graph, I would like to add the vertical line at x equals whenever we have the x value is 2. So also you can mention what should be the line type. You can say line type 2, line type 1, or what are they. And then you can add also horizontal line. H equals 10, that means at value 10 horizontal line would be added. And then text, that means you want to add a text where you have the x value 120, y value 15. And then what would be the text you want to add. Without adding anything, let's create the graph. Let's add them one by one. So you can see I did not add anything. Right now, what I would like to do is that I'd like to add a vertical line. So you can see I added a vertical line where we have the value is 52. And then horizontal line, if I want to add that, you can see I added a horizontal line where the value of y is 10. And if I want to add a text, actually we can run together. So you can say I added maximum height where x-axis and y-axis, x-axis is 120, y-axis is 15. But then again you will see that it's showing you a little bit in here because it tries to find the appropriate space. Okay. So the last item we have is that we would like to add mathematical expression. To add mathematical expression in your graph, what you need to do is to decide on which side you want to add that. So I added m text. You can also add it inside your graph, but then again I found m text would be better. So I said that on the side 2, that means on the left side, I would like to add mathematical expression. So I started with expression. What's the expression I would like to add? And before and after that mathematical expression, you have to add this tilde symbol. Then you will see that it's adding that mathematical expression. And the size of the font and where it should be added, everything I mentioned, only one graph. So you can see m cube. If you say m2, you will see that it's going to change. Also it was m3, but if you want to change it to side 3 maybe, then you will see that it will move to top, but we don't have much space on top. That's why it's not showing up. To make space on top, you have to change the MAI function. So let's say side 1. So you can see if I say side 1, it goes to the bottom. If I say side 0, I'm just showing, maybe it will. So you can see it's side 0 is nothing. So that means side 2 is where it's going to show up on the left side. So that's the one. After you are done with it, need to word, and then after you need to word, you will see that it will create the word file. I already gave you the word file and my output files. Also for who are working online, same thing, you can just create them. So you can see, you can play around. Okay, so that's it for the graphics and additional items, the advanced tools. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.